If you're dating after 40 and you keep attracting Mr. Unavailable on repeat, and what you really want is lasting love with Mr. Right, you're in the right place. This episode is for you if you feel like your constant self doubt is keeping you from finding lasting love in your 40s. Let's get started. Welcome. I'm Truly Eleanor, intuitive dating coach, helping women over 40 find Mr. Right without wasting time on Uggs, unavailable guys. After 17 years coaching hundreds of women around the world and breaking my own patterns in my 40s to find my Mr. Right, I know that love is closer than you think. If you want dating advice that actually works, make sure you subscribe to my channel. New videos every week. Today, I'm really excited. We're going to be talking about one of the things that has held me back for many years that I've been able to overcome. And the reason I didn't meet my husband until I was 44 years old is my self-doubt. Even though I had self-doubt, I started my own business, I traveled the world, and I went on big adventures. When I applied that action to dating, that's when my love life transformed and alchemized. I talk many times about my enough is enough moment after being dumped by text message when I was in my early 40s. And I said, that is never going to happen to me again. Today, I'm going to talk about self-doubt and allowing that to run my decisions. And what does self-doubt actually look like? Well, it's second-guessing myself constantly. I was changing my mind. I was saying yes, then no, then yes again. And what if this happens or that happens? And whipping myself into a frenzy before a date or in any kind of circumstance where I felt like there was high stakes. I was full of self-doubt. I understand this. It made perfect sense that I would be like that and that I would be riddled with self-doubt because I was raised in a narcissistic family. And as an adult child of narcissists, I was taught to cater to everybody else, to only understand and focus on other people. And so, of course, I never was able to have that sense of self to say, I don't need to be constantly second guessing every single thing in my entire life. I can actually make decisions that make sense and I can follow my heart. I really want to talk about that process and how I did that in my life and how you can too. So if you feel like you've got these thoughts running around and they're making you crazy and you're having like almost a literal argument with yourself constantly about dating, about all sorts of things in your life, then, you're going to really get a lot out of this episode. It is possible to overcome it, even though I felt the same that you might be feeling right now is this is an impossible thing to break. Like, how do you actually get out of this mess of entangled thoughts that are constantly in your head to actually get a feeling of what is right for you and to be able to choose what is right for you? My first step was to become aware of it, to really understand that the thoughts, the being ungrounded and being in my head all the time was what was actually the problem. And it wasn't that I wasn't a strong person. It wasn't that I wasn't good at making decisions. It wasn't that I wasn't brave or courageous or resilient. I was all of those things. It's just being in my head all the time was fooling me and giving me the wrong sense of who I was. I was actually extremely resilient, very compassionate, very caring, very understanding, very self-aware. And my head was telling me the exact opposite because my head was the conditioning that I had gone through as a child and the constant catering to other people, not making me aware that I was actually really good with a crisis or very good in a situation where I had to make a fast decision. If you're sitting here thinking, well, maybe this is me, think about your upbringing. Were you constantly told to divert any kind of decision making to someone else? Were you told or conditioned to give your power away to other people? Were you told, no, that's not the way you're feeling, and no, that's not what's true? That didn't really happen. All of those things causes a huge amount of self-doubt. You've probably never been taught or weren't aware of how much time you actually spend in your head. And now I'm talking as someone who is a Reiki teacher, who has been into personal development for decades and has explored all of these spiritual techniques. And I still was in my head most of the time. And it took me meeting someone who I remember I was really frustrated about something. And he said that it was almost like I was a talking head. I had to train myself in a new way. Am I doing all of these things, but I'm not actually allowing myself to be in my body or allowing myself to be in my heart because there was so much pain there. I want you to just think about the fact that you've done the best you can and to accept everything you've done up until this point and wanting to protect your heart and not wanting to be in your body and be in that heart space because it is painful, but also being aware that that is probably the reason why you are filled with self-doubt, if that is one of the issues you have. If you're constantly doubting yourself and you just don't know whether you're coming or going, this is the reason that you have the self-doubt, that you're always in your head, that you've been taught to look outside of yourself, to give your power away. Your head has been telling you all this time that you don't know how to make a decision, that you've always made the wrong decision, or you always get it wrong, or whatever those messages are. Stop for a minute and say, what if that's wrong? What if I'm actually very intuitive and very able to immediately know what's right for me? And now there's two phases to that. So understanding that you're very intuitive is an extremely important step. And then the next step would be to start listening to it, to start trusting your intuition. And that's another big leap that I'm talking about. And the reason I was able to do all of those things, like travel the world and start my business and go on these adventures, despite the self-doubt, was I started deciding that I wasn't going to listen to those voices, that I was going to create my own identity and my own reality and say, those things aren't true. And just follow my heart, even if it sounds crazy, even if it's illogical. Some of the things I did once I decided to get out of my head and to listen to my heart was to quit my job, break up with my boyfriend, and go to Africa. And I was constantly getting these messages like, you have to do this, you have to go on this big adventure, this is your big shakeup, this is your do or die moment. And I did it. I did that. And even though I had the self-doubt, it was still running in the background. It was still trying to say, you're crazy, this is nuts, and all of those things. But I did it anyway. And I spent a few months there. And even though I did have a negative experience and came home, it set me on my path that I needed to be on, which is to be sure of myself, to follow my heart, to follow my intuition, to get out of my head. And that's the journey I'm talking about. The longest journey is from the head to the heart. If you're doubting yourself in your love life, ask yourself what other areas you doubt yourself in. Do you constantly argue with yourself? This technique is going to help you in all areas of your life. I just happen to be talking about dating. When I opened my heart and let love in all ways of my life, I began to heal and magnetize those beautiful experiences and opportunities to me that I never would have had. And I began to feel at home within myself, within my heart. And yes, there were things that I needed to heal and let go of, but I was able to go on this journey to find my true self. I was able to do that once I decided, well, I'm not going to be living in this soup of self-doubt, constant fears, and my head making me go crazy. And my intuition and my heart became my guiding force in my life. And I started to listen to it. Let me give you some practical ways that you can start doing this. My first thing is to become aware. So we always look at my framework, which is 3 pillars. It's awareness, acceptance, and connection. Starting with the awareness, you need to be aware of what those messages are, what that doubt is telling you, who it's saying you are. For me, it was you're flighty, you're flaky, you're not reliable, you can't make a decision, you're insecure, all of these things. And none of those things were true because I'm an extremely courageous person and I take healthy risks and I go after what I want and I'm very decisive. It was just these messages of my identity were telling me the exact opposite and I was believing it. I became aware of what these stories were, beliefs I had. Started journaling exercise after this episode and say, what is my self-doubt telling me? Who is it saying that I am? And am I willing to accept that? That's a very powerful exercise to start with and see where you go from there. Making that decision, well, I'm not going to believe this anymore because this has made me make decisions that are not necessarily who I am. Second piece is acceptance. And this is not about forgiveness and blah, 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 forgiving other people, all that. That's like you could do about 10 episodes on that. But I'm just saying I accept that because I was raised this way, because I was conditioned this way, because I was taught to doubt myself, and it makes perfect sense that I've made these decisions. And so I'm going to accept the fact that I've done all of these things up until this point, and it's perfectly okay and it's perfectly reasonable that I would be doing that. And that's a whole exercise that you wouldn't believe the power behind that. You wouldn't believe the amount of freedom that you will get from just doing that for yourself, accepting all the choices you've made up until this point. And I'm talking a real acceptance, just becoming aware of, yeah, well, this makes sense. Of course I would be doing that. Of course I would be insecure. Of course I would choose this person. Of course I would go on, these dates and have this kind of relationship. It all makes perfect sense. And that's really the acceptance piece, which is very valuable. And it's very important to do that. Coming from awareness, you definitely don't want to beat yourself up. You don't want to say, oh, I've looked at myself and I see all these patterns and now I see all the things that are wrong with me. And I'm aware of these beliefs and etc. And so now I'm going to use that to beat myself into submission with it. Say what a terrible person I am. Look how weak. Why didn't I choose this? Why didn't I say no to him? All that stuff. You definitely don't want to do that. That's why I always say you go immediately into acceptance. So you're going awareness, acceptance, and then you go into the beautiful part of connecting. So connection to your true self, connection to your heart, connecting to the messages from your intuition. And this is a getting to know yourself all over again, or getting to know yourself from a different point of view, a deeply powerful and connected relationship with yourself. If you feel like, oh, I'm coming around to this again, oh, here I am at this again, just think of yourself as going on an upward spiral. So you're spiraling around to this again. It's like, oh, it's this again, but you're on your way up. You're spiraling up, and you may have to go around and come across something again. Like, oh, here we are again at this place of self-doubt. And that's okay. I'm spiraling upwards. I'm ever expanding, ever evolving in an upward revolving motion. And that was taught to me by my mentor, my Reiki teacher, many years ago, when I was saying, why do I have to go through this again? I thought I already healed this. And she gave me that upward spiral thing. You're going in an upward motion of evolution for yourself. It is actually a good thing that you're coming around this again because you're on your way up. So think of it that way. And when you connect to yourself, it's getting to know you, your relationship with yourself, your body, your thoughts, your motivations, all of those things, looking at it as a whole. And how can I more deeply connect into myself? For example, it would be things like that deep reflection of journaling. It could be asking yourself questions like, what do I like to do? What do I really love? Simple questions that we never ask ourselves, especially if you were raised this way to cater to other people. You've never taken a moment to say, what's my favorite color? What do I like to eat? Where do I like to go? What would be really fun for me? And asking those simple questions as the door into getting to know your true self. And then spending time with your heart. So I do a heart expansion exercise, which every morning you can start off with simply closing your eyes. You put your hand on your heart and you are putting all your attention on the center of your chest, your energetic heart, and getting connected into that whirling energy. It's like a whirlpool going around clockwise, and it is filling your whole center of your heart. And just imagine it expanding until it fills the whole body and then fills your whole entire energy field and filling the room, expanding until it's as big as the town you're in, the country, the world, the universe, and beyond. And then from that expanded state, your heart is open. It's fully expanded. And this is where sometimes mentally or with our thoughts, we go, oh my God, if I open my heart, I'm going to get heartbroken again. I'm going to be vulnerable. I'm going to be a target. Absolutely not. The heart is extremely strong and powerful. And the more expanded you are, the bigger your energy field is, the bigger and more space you take up, the more powerful you are, the more things just drop off you. The tighter you hold your energy in and the more you protect yourself with a very thin energetic skin, the weaker you are. Because you don't have that space, you don't have that powerful expansion, you don't have the influence of your heart energy out in a radiating circle around you. I don't know where I heard it. Might have been something like Heart Math Institute, where they had measured people's circumference of their heart energy, and some of the biggest spiritual teachers and people like the Dalai Lama had a massive heart energy circumference and sphere around them, whereas the average person was like maybe a foot around them and very close to themselves. And so imagine how much more confident and in tune and in touch with what you want and connected to everyone you will be the more expanded you are. And this relates back to what we were talking about earlier. When you're in that expanded state, the self-doubt just melts away. You can't be in a state of self-doubt and your mind ping-ponging when you're fully expanded. It's almost impossible because you're in a state of powerful presence of yourself and feeling and witnessing all the connection of you and everything around you. It's almost like the mind can't even grasp anything. It cannot take hold of you or take hold of anything because it's so big. And I know I'm getting very esoteric and mystical here, but this is a very important lesson that I learned, that the more expanded I was, the more in my own power, the more I was able to make decisions from my intuition, following my heart. And therefore, the self-doubt would melt away. And even if it was there, it was sort of like, what is that voice in the background? I'm not even going to listen to it. Or it's just that sort of kind of annoying low voice in the background that you don't want to listen to for any reason. That's how I overcame my self-doubt and moving from my head to my heart. That's your journey. That's the challenge I put forth to you. And I hope that you take it, because for me, it changed everything. And for the women I've worked with, it changed their entire lives to be like that. And it is definitely the biggest step that you can take to overcome that self-doubt, to make decisions that are best for you, that feel really good, and to be more confident in your love life. I hope this has been helpful. Until next time, next week, I can't believe, is the season finale for season 4. We've been discussing all the things around emotional healing and getting into that deep healing space to find love after 40. And next week is going to be the finale for that. And I'm going to talk more about my framework of finding true love in your 40s. And remember, love is closer than you think.